Sailors of Reddit, what's the most unusual thing you've experienced while at sea? When the water is dead flat, and the sky is clear, at night, it's really possible to get completely disoriented and fall in. You can't tell where the water begins and the sky ends. So you always keep your hand on the lifeline. My area occasionally gets phytoplankton blooms. If you're boating at night and sail into a bloom, the wake of your boat will suddenly start glowing blue. It's pretty darn bright, easily seen with the naked eye, and appears out of nowhere. One minute you're sailing in complete darkness. The next you're in glowing water. Was in the U.S. Navy on board the USS Tarawa LHA-1 from 20/20/2006. Some unusual things I experienced were the shellback ceremonies. Basically, a sailor who has never crossed the equator is considered a slimy wog, and those who have crossed the equator were considered shellbacks. It's a huge thing that usually takes all afternoon, where people dress up as King Neptune and his court and induct the new girls into the fraternity. It's all light-hearted and goofy now, but back in the day it crossed into hazing territory. I got to do it twice because I became a golden shellback when we crossed the international dateline. Other than that, I work night watch generally and standing topside in the middle of the Persian Gulf at night was one of my favorite things. The amount of stars you could see in the sky was nuts, and just listening to the water was soothing. Was sailing off the coast of the big island Hawaii in February. We were mostly interested in fishing since the wind had died down. There were no other boats around that were visible, and it was a very calm and peaceful day. Now often you'll see humpback whales breaching in February, and you can also hear them singing if you are underwater. That is cool enough, but this encounter was awesome. I was baiting a hook, and suddenly on the starboard side of the boat a pod of about 20 melonhead whales comes up right beside the boat, and they just start staring us down. I lean over, and this one dude moves a little closer and just keeps moving his head so he can eye me up and down. They all just kept staring at us with an expression of WTF are these? Who interesting. Don't look like they can swim at all. They eyed us at close quarters for about 5 minutes and then just took off. The weirdest part of the encounter was the close eye contact I had with the first whale. Was definitely two individuals sizing each other up. Best part of the whole day. We were sailing 330 feet. Ship from the North Sea to West Africa. I was off shift and sleeping. I woke up and for some reason decided to go up to the bridge, which is something I usually never did when I could be sleeping or eating. It was night, so all the lights were off on the bridge save for a few red ones. And I noticed how bright it was outside. I went over to starboard, and the fucking white cliffs of Dover were completely illuminated by a full moon, just beaming moonlight. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. Of course the mate on duty was English and was nonchalantly like, "Yeah, that's Dover. This one isn't me." But a Welsh guy the first met in the Caribbean. He had done a few transatlantic trips in a small sailboat, so had tons of ocean experience. A big storm caught him, with huge rolling waves. He decided to heave to ride it out, basically using your sail and the rudder to put the brakes on and give yourself a smoother ride. He was in the cockpit and was riding up one of the bigger waves. The next part is wild. He swears to God on his grandmother's grave that a giant whale just below the surface cruised up the wave beside him and just stared straight at him. He describes looking into this animal's huge eyeball, just looking back at him, for what was probably a couple seconds, but he said felt like minutes. From a few feet away. He's never lied or really even exaggerated otherwise. So I believe him. Can you imagine seeing that? Sometimes I really miss being at sea.